Imagine you've been convicted of a crime you didn't commit. You've spent years behind bars. And when you're finally exonerated, you're told the state owes you nothing.
That's exactly what happens in 23 states across the country. But Kaj Larson found even in states that do provide money to the wrongly imprisoned, former inmates can be caught in a no-man's land between guilt and innocence.
Danny Brown lives in a legal limbo. In 2001, his conviction for murder was thrown out, and ever since, he's been enjoying the life of a free man in Toledo, Ohio.
How are you, man? All right. Good to see you.
But there's one thing missing from Danny's life on the outside. $700,000. He says the state owes him for the 19 years it took from him.
The money would be a great help because it's difficult. I would like make $8.25 an hour. I work at a book factory in Toledo. I owe some bills for college, and that's kind of steep.
The victim, a young mother who lived here, was sexually assaulted and killed. Danny was serving a life sentence for the murder until new DNA evidence implicated another man, a man already in prison for an eerily similar murder. What did you think when the DNA evidence came back?
I was like ecstatic that it could happen.
Unlike almost half the states in the country, Ohio actually does have a law that compensates those who have been wrongfully convicted. But Danny Brown is unlikely to ever be eligible for any of that money. Why aren't you being compensated, Danny?
Because the prosecutor said I'm a suspect. The problem with the law is it's got like 7 criteria. And one of them is you can't be a suspect. I feel all the criteria except for the one where you can't be a suspect.
In 2001, Danny was released from prison when a judge overruled his conviction, saying that there wasn't sufficient evidence to keep him locked up. But the court did not make a determination as to whether Danny was actually innocent. That's the $700,000 question. If he's innocent enough, or if there's enough doubt to release him after 18.5 years in prison, is he then innocent enough to be compensated for that time?
Well, obviously not. The courts have said no. The reason, he has got to prove he is actually innocent, and he cannot do that.
Julia Bates, the county's chief prosecutor, believes Danny doesn't deserve compensation because to her, he's still a suspect. How does a man prove that he's innocent?
You know, it's a difficult burden, unless perhaps the law enforcement side of the equation would agree. And if there would be any way that I would be able to say he is innocent, I would say that.
But Bates insists she can't say that.
Well, one of the main reasons is the fact that there still lives and breathes a person who was a 6-year-old boy at the time of this crime who still maintains with every breath in his body that this is the man that killed his mother. And it's very difficult to ignore that.
Eyewitness identification is a leading cause of wrongful conviction.
Michele Berry represents Danny Brown.
75% of the DNA exonerations involves a mistaken eyewitness identification, and that phenomenon is all the more so when you have an eyewitness such as Jeffrey Russell, who was a very young child at the time in a very traumatic situation.
Danny and his lawyers have tried to take his case for innocence to court, where they were denied when Prosecutor Bates's office made the case that Danny was still a suspect.
If Danny is still considered a suspect, then let's move on this case one way or the other. Let's have a retrial.
Why not retry Danny Brown today?
I'm not convinced that we have the necessary evidence to go forward. If and when we had sufficient provable, credible, beyond a reasonable doubt evidence, we would retry him. And if we never find good, provable, beyond a reasonable doubt evidence, then we won't ever retry him. He'll remain free, he'll remain out, but of course he won't recover money. It's an open case, it's a pending investigation.
An investigation that's been pending for more than 10 years.
When do you say, you know what, maybe this guy didn't do this? When do you take a serious look and say, you know what, let's look at this a little closer, let's do the right thing?
I guess it grates on your notion of fairness that somebody has to live in this legal limbo. Is this a failure point of the system?
Well, I don't know. I can't. It's very difficult to answer. This is about recovering money. This isn't about your freedom. He got his freedom. We didn't fight that. We didn't fight that. We embraced that. When it's about money, there are certain rules, and the rules in Ohio say you have to be innocent, you have to prove you're innocent, and you can never be prosecuted, or you don't get any money. If that's not fair, they should change the rules. In the meantime, I mean, this might sound trite, but Danny is free. He's free to breathe the air and, you know, walk the street and feel the sun, and he's not in a cell.
In a sense, Danny is still a prisoner to this crime. And though he's not imprisoned, he's in the prison of that suspicion.
After 19 years behind bars, Danny waits. Not guilty, not innocent, and without any compensation. And perhaps without something even more important.
To say, oh, you got your freedom, go on with your life. No, it's not free until you get this total exoneration. You're not free if you got this hanging over your head. You're not free if people suspect this is what you did. And I feel like I deserve more than that.
According to the Innocence Project, Danny Brown is among 40% of those wrongly convicted across the nation who haven't received compensation for their time behind bars.